When you think of Gundam OVAs, you probably think of things like Origin, Unicorn, Thunderbolt, and 8th MS Team to name a few. These are all fantastic, flashy OVAs in their own right, with some amazingly told stories that I would recommend you watch if you haven't seen them already. But before you go ahead and do that, I want to showcase to you a much more understated and grounded Gundam story. One that I feel is really underappreciated in the grand scheme of things. A small 6-episode OVA series called Mobile Suit Gundam 80 War in the Pocket. Hey, I'm Visek and welcome to my YouTube channel where you get to see me be a sucker for anything that includes a giant robot, as well as plenty of other videos discussing anime, manga, and video games that I enjoy and are genuinely passionate about. War in the Pocket is easily one of the most touching war stories in all of Gundam, if not all of anime and media. Gundam is a series that typically relies heavily on action-packed space battles to show off their really cool mecha designs, which are ultimately the draw into the franchise. Due to this, a much lesser emphasis is placed on what's happening in the background of these stories. The civilians, the seemingly inconsequential ants to our giant robots, separate from the ever so important pilots who control these war machines. Taking a break from the craziness of new types, soldiers, and giant space battles in the UC timeline is the reason a lot of people tend to recommend taking the time to watch side stories such as War in the Pocket flourish. Because as always, context builds the foundations for amazing stories and realized worlds. It's pretty well known that near every Gundam stories share anti-war themes. It's always been a staple for what draws people in. You come for the giant robots and leave with depression, or at times, hope. But out of all the Gundam series I've watched in my recent binge, War in the Pocket is easily the most effective at relaying the simple message of war is bad, and that there aren't any good or bad guys in war. As generic as that theme may sound like nowadays, you'd be surprised how many war stories throughout the years have been produced that don't quite hit the mark. Whereas War in the Pocket absolutely delivers on this concept better than any anime or film I've personally ever seen, without ever coming off as preachy or cheesy, whilst simultaneously evoking strong emotions from the viewer, which I can certainly vouch for, all within 6 25-minute episodes. The story of War in the Pocket sets itself apart from other Gundam series as it doesn't particularly follow anyone special, so to speak. Our protagonist is a 10-year-old boy named Alfred from the neutral colony of Side 6, and throughout the impactful 6-episode run, we get to see his perspective on war completely shift. Al goes through a tough journey, growing out of his naive and romanticized look of war and the military, ultimately coming to the cruel realization of the devastation that it brings and the meaninglessness of it all. And a key component of why it all comes together and works so well is because it feels so real. The characters portrayed are so lifelike that you can't help but get attached. They aren't simply walking tropes and bring the quality of the show to a whole nother level. War in the Pocket makes a far better case for getting attached to its main cast in, and I can't stress this enough, 6 episodes than most other series can do in 50+ episodes. In the beginning, it's made clear to us that Al and his friends are kept in the dark on and oblivious to the ramifications of the ongoing war, which to an extent is fair enough. I mean, how could they know? They are children after all. But that lack of education doesn't stop them from putting 2 and 2 together, realizing that something's going on. Whatever you may think about kids, they aren't as dumb as you think. They take everything they do see, the soldiers and the giant mech robots, and develop a warped fantasy about how cool it would be to fight in a war. We even get a scene of Al playing a mecha-style video game, going completely against the heroic instructions of the game and shooting down his hometown and school. Now, whatever you take out of that scene is up to you. I'm certainly not the type to say that video games like GTA and COD actually correlate to real-world violence. And honestly, I don't even think this scene is trying to portray that. To me, it shows the inept numbness to the severity of the real-world situation that's actually going on around Al, alongside the cruel irony that this exact situation could very well happen in real life to him at any given time. And then it does. Whilst at school, an actual battle erupts in their closed-off world. Yet, what's truly starking is that the kids don't run and hide. They're invigorated, excited even. Al in particular runs away from school towards the conflict to try and get a closer look at the Zeon Zaku. There, we get our fated encounter that sets the whole story in motion. Al meets the Zeon soldier and pilot of the Zaku, Bernard, or Bernie for short. Al is in awe of the mobile suit, and of course the real world young soldier standing in front of him whom he looks up to. Due to these particular circumstances, Bernie takes an opportunity to befriend Al in order to gain information in any way that he can. And Al's admiration for a real life soldier did make him quite easy to manipulate. Quickly, he agrees to help Bernie collect some secret information as if it's some sort of spy game. From this point forward, a friendship is built between the two with an unfortunate foundation of a misunderstanding and lies. Bernie's a fantastic character throughout the series. He's a Zeon rookie stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to keep up his cool guy facade in order to keep Al playing along, as well as being roped into the role of an older brother at times. Not that he ever truly seems opposed to that role, which does end up being a sweet sentiment to say the least. We see their relationship flourish throughout the obstacles they tackle together, but I won't really go any further into that in order to avoid spoilers for now. There's also the relationship between the two and our third main character, Christina, or Chris for short, who, unbeknownst to Bernie and us for a time, is actually a Federation soldier that pilots the Gundam they've been searching for. This makes the realization of the situation we've been put in all the more soul-crushing, as the dramatic irony allows itself to eat away at us, bracing for the inevitable impact on when these three characters collide, only for it to reach a crescendo so touching it'll take you back for a minute. Dare I say, it's perfect. So let's tackle these three characters a little bit further, starting with Al. He's a typical stubborn 10-year-old to an extent. What I value most about his character is that the writers never take the low-hanging fruit of dumbing him down and making him seem unnecessarily immature. In short, the kid's got balls, can think for himself, and has a tenacity to keep moving forward and get the job done. Although War in the Pocket could be considered a coming-of-age story, I think it's fitting that Al doesn't have one particular earth-shattering moment resulting in an epiphany changing him forever. His change is slowly built up upon and reflected by the end of the series. It's subtle and it works well. Bernie, while seeming plain at first, ends up being quite the nuanced character by the end. In reality, he's just a regular foot soldier that's never truly standed out in the academy or the battlefield, which I found to be a funnily ironic contrast due to his resemblance to Char. This contrast goes even further as Char's not the type to boast, yet we see Bernie exaggerate and distort his achievements to Al. For example, telling him he's 1 kill away from being crowned the ace pilot title. Lastly, Chris, the final cog in the puzzle that inevitably drives the plot forward. Whilst understated at first, due to our interactions with her being through the lens of Al, we slowly see pieces of her charisma, aptness, and vulnerability shine through. She's generally the kind of person that relies heavily on facts. She knows the situation she's been put in as a soldier and a pilot, and acts accordingly, even to her detriment. One of my favourite lines and exchanges from the series comes from when the police question her about the fight the day before. 246 people dead, 572 people wounded. That's the number of victims from yesterday. I don't want that many people getting hurt again. To which Chris responds, if we didn't fight, more people would have been killed. It couldn't be helped. And here is where my favourite line comes in. I know what you're trying to say, but no one should ever have to die because it couldn't be helped. The number of victims isn't the point. If you've watched anime long enough, I'm sure you'll have heard, or potentially read in the subtitles, the term, it can't be helped, or shogunai. The idea is basically, if there is something that's detestable happening, it's better to just suck it up and deal with the fact that that's just life, rather than doing anything to actively change it. It's basically a rhetorical question, and what I love most is the subversion of that norm. It's like being in Australia and saying to someone, hey mate, how you going? Or what can you do? Only for them to just stop and be like, you know what, mate? Actually, I'm not doing too great. Or, you know what you can do? Actually try and help to fix the issue. How are ya? What can you do? And it can't be helped are the type of phrases that get overused into oblivion. So much so that they start to lose their actual meaning and just end up as throwaway lines in conversation. In the circumstance Chris had been put in, it's really all she could say. And she almost tries to use that as a justification for what happened, before quickly being shut down, and I just absolutely love that. That line is what inspired me to start writing this script. I truly felt that strongly about it. To touch lightly on animation and sound design while ending on a high, it's an 80s anime that held up extremely well and is nowhere near as jarring as watching the original Gundam anime, which is in part thanks to the efforts of Haruhiko Mikimoto's fantastic character design. The OST is also genuinely beautiful, and I saw myself sitting through all of the opening endings throughout all 6 episodes. I just wanted the experience to last that little bit longer, and the music's just so great, so why not? So to end off this one, I'm gonna jump into spoilers for a second. Feel free to pause and read the comments below, or just skip to the next video, because I'd highly suggest you do go into this series without any spoilers. Alright, cool. You had a chance, let's continue. The ending in particular is what I really wanted to talk about here. Specifically, the part where Al watches Bernie's tape. That hit me like a truck. Honestly, it was far more emotional than Tony Stark's video message at the end of Endgame. And you can quote me on that. I'll proudly admit I cried like a bitch over a 6-episode OVA. Bernie gave up his life thinking he just saved the colony. Reminds me of a certain Spartan from Reach. What hit me just as hard but in a different way was when Al starts breaking down crying at his school ceremony, celebrating the peace that was finally restored, only for his friends to try and cheer him up by saying another war will start soon and it'll be even bigger, flashier, and more fun than this one, not knowing at all what he had gone through. That is where we finally see Al's development flourish. Al from episode 1 would have laughed and agreed with his friend's sentiment, but instead he just sits there and continues to cry. And then it's over. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Go watch War in the Pocket if you haven't seen it already. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Peace. Also, if you're wondering why I haven't uploaded in a little while, I've just been quite busy with general life stuff and also binge watching Hajime no Ippo, which is fantastic freaking anime. Anyway, see you next time. I gotta wake up at 5 a.m.